Thank you for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Leaders. It's the podcast about leaders for leaders, sponsored by Legacy Business Consultants. They're improving employee performance, development, and engagement. You can find all the information about Legacy Business Consultants at legacybc.net and on your social media channel of choice. Welcome. My name's Jamin Baxter. I'm a business, sales, and leadership coach, and I'm joined by one of the best in the business. I say it every time. I'm going to keep saying it.
I like it.
He's a leadership author. He's a coach and a speaker, and he's been helping people across the globe level up their leadership for the last 20 years. Welcome, my friend, Mr. John Barrett.
That's right. It's good to be here, Jamin. Good to see you, my friend.
Absolutely. We've enjoyed the feedback that we're getting from listeners.
Yeah, so great.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just pleased that this is helping people take their next level up in their leadership journey.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of some of the behind the scenes, behind the curtain conversation. We see a lot of speakers and really successful people. We kind of see their highlight reels a lot of times, whether it's on social media or a video or a keynote or something like that. But this is really just kind of conversational, kind of sitting down, having some coffee, and just chatting about some great lessons. We use a great framework that our mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell, has used when he goes and sits down with people and asks questions. We use some of those same questions, and we just bring some great guests on. And we've got a great guest today that I'm really excited about.
I am so excited. Over the course of 22 years at Ramsey Solutions, Jack led business units as Senior Executive Vice President, Board Member, and Chief People Officer. He was responsible for human resources. He's been married to Rhonda for 27 years. They have 8 children, and Jack's a native Nashvilleian. His big family now lives on a farm in College Grove, Tennessee. Welcome to the table, Mr. Jack Galloway.
Woohoo!
Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be with you today.
Oh, we're so thankful that you're joining us.
That's right. Looking forward to it, Jack. Thanks for being a part of this.
Jack, so one of the questions that we always like to start out with when we're talking with leaders, as a way to just kind of peel back the curtain and take a look at exactly what's the secret sauce that makes Jack Galloway successful. We want to ask you, what is the greatest lesson that you've ever learned in your life?
Well, Jamin, it's interesting. You were talking about John Maxwell. I'm just such a huge fan of John Maxwell. And even went to an event one time where we were at his home. And, this was one of my heroes. And we were in his office, and there's dozens of people in there, and he's the man. And, I expected him to maybe sign some books, to maybe answer a few questions. But let me tell you, John Maxwell was the most down-to-earth, people-oriented person I have ever met. He impressed me so much. He was the life of the party. He was having more fun talking to us than we were talking to him. And he told story after story. And I got to tell you, I already was a big fan of his, but his stock really went up with me when I got to meet him in person. And so I'm just an even bigger fan of his today. And, one of the things that John talks about that is the greatest lesson that I've ever learned is people. I thought that I was a business guy that liked people. And then about the last 2 years, I discovered I'm really a people guy that loves business. And I've learned so much from John Maxwell about people. But the greatest lesson that I've learned outside of our need for Jesus and being saved from our sins, my greatest lesson is how important people are in my life. My close friends, my new friends, like you guys, people that I meet at the store that I don't know. What I've found is that even when we get really busy and we move so fast, that eventually the projects get done, the works get finished. Sometimes the job ends, but the relationships that we've had with people, the way we've treated people, and the things we've learned from people, we carry with us forever. And so the greatest lesson that I've learned in business is just how important people are in my life. And it's helped me to slow down a little bit and make sure that I'm taking time to kind of hear what's going on beyond the situation that we're trying to solve, and just to be a good person and take care of other people.
I love it. One thing you just said there, Jack, with that idea of, I thought I was a business person that kind of liked people. And then that sort of flipped. And where was that moment for you? Or was it sort of just a gradual thing? Or was there a kind of an epic moment that may shifted that, where your realization to say, wait a minute, this is about people above everything else. How did that sort of uh, evolution take place for you?
You know, as I reflect back on it, it's been about 2 years. I was in the last year of my job at Ramsey. I was in a leadership time where we were doing some journaling and I was doing some reflecting. And the truth is, for over 20 years, I had really developed my identity as a business guy, as a guy who could solve business problems, a guy who could make a business profitable, and a guy who could make a business run smoothly. I mean, that's really who I wanted to be and who I thought of myself as. And the truth is, I was during a little bit of a wilderness time that we'll talk a little bit about. And we're listening to this person teaching on leadership, and I'm doing some journaling. And I really just felt like it was the Lord that said, "You've got it almost right.
Mm.
You are a business guy and a people guy, but you're really a person who loves people first, and just the area, the arena that you've used it in happens to be business." And, it stunned me for a second because I wasn't sure if I liked that or not. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. And as I reflect back on that moment, it really began a change in my career. It began a change in how I see myself. And it really was a turning point in my personal life and my work life.
Yeah, I love, I love on your website, Jack, you are known. So this is kind of cool. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but the people whisperer. So unpack that for me for a minute, right? I love that. I love it. But it goes in line with what you're saying with, just being people centric and that. But where did that sort of people whisperer sort of come from? What was that has kind of come out from you?
It happened over a long period of time. I'm 52 years old. I have been in business a long time, and I've worked directly with people in business for a long time. And I really enjoyed working in businesses. I still do. I enjoy working on a good business. But what I found to be my sweet spot, I guess, and this took time, was really not how ingenious my business ideas were. It was that I could sit down with a person or two people that were at odds. It was a frustrated situation, it was confused, and we were stuck. And I could hear things from them that not everybody else in the room could hear. I could hear why they were frustrated. And then I could listen to the other person and I could hear why they were frustrated. And the truth was, when I heard these things, and I don't mean like I heard an audible voice, I just understood them really clearly.
Hmm.
The solution was not that hard. And we would come up with a solution that worked. We'd get back to work. Everybody was excited to get back and have a solution. And over time, what I discovered was my real niche was not being a great salesperson or a great strategist. It was being able to relate to people. It was to be able to sit down with somebody when their child was sick with cancer and we were discussing a sales problem, and I would pause and go, "What are we doing? Why are we talking about this? Why aren't we talking about what's really going on and what's really important to you here?" Or a person may be going through something awesome like an adoption, or they may be going through a divorce and one of the worst times in their life, or a death in their family. And when we slowed down a little bit to talk about what really mattered, then when we got around to the business side of the conversation, and that still has to happen, it was so much easier. Solving those problems was almost natural. They almost solved themselves. And that person walked out feeling like somebody cared about them, like they had been heard, and they were excited to go back and work. And I felt like I had done a good job as their leader by being a listener. And so it really developed over time. And then people would start to invite me into situations where there was a frustrated or a confused people situation. They would say, "We're at our wits' end. See if you can help us with this." And I just was able to understand what's going on with people. I'm an Enneagram 9 with an 8 wing. So I want everybody to be happy, but I am willing to fight about it to get there.
That's right.
And so, um, that kind of helps me to, as a mediator, and to really just understand people. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a marriage counselor. I don't want to be those things. I'm really working with people in a business environment.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really been my sweet spot, is just to be able to sit down and relate to people.
I know that you've had Dr. Henry Cloud at several of your events when you were at Ramsey. And I just heard him speak last week at Global Leadership Summit. And he was speaking about building trust. And the number one thing he said was understanding. He said, we trust someone when we feel like they understand us. And
Yeah.
that goes to exactly what you're talking about there, Jack.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Cloud. I've hung out with him some in person. He led some of our strategy sessions, and he is brilliant. And he's also got a lot of common sense, a lot of personality, a lot of guts, and he's a fantastic business leader.
Yeah. I love what you said, the difference, just, I almost hear it as difference between hearing and listening. I can remember years ago, I was early 20s, and I remember going to a conference and a guy speaking about the difference between hearing and listening. And he sort of used that verbiage as saying, hearing is just kind of a physical thing that you do, right? But listening is something that's emotional, where you connect and you really find out what's going on. And I think as leaders, I think that's such a good point, Jack, that you kind of bring up, and what sounds like what led to a lot of your success in working with people was, not just hearing, so to speak, but listening, really being able to hear what's not being said, and maybe hear what's being said behind what is being said. And I think as leaders, I would really encourage all of our listeners today, all of us, just to remember that. Maybe we just need to be reminded of that as leaders. Are we listening? Are we connecting? Are we really going beyond just hearing, but really connecting with people? I think that's a great point that we all need.
Two things that you can do as a leader that will sort of help you retrain yourself to go from one to the other. One is be curious and ask questions. When
Yeah.
somebody's telling you what's going on in their life, particularly if they start sharing something that makes them a little vulnerable, it's a little personal, it's maybe outside the immediate situation, and they're kind of testing the waters with you to see how you'll react. The best thing that you can do is ask more questions.
Yeah.
Ask how that felt. Ask how they got there. Ask it, instead of giving advice, it's really to ask more of what's going on. And the second thing is, when they come back in your office a week and a half later for something else, and you've had this breakthrough situation, this breakthrough conversation with them earlier, you need to follow up and ask them how that's going.
Mm.
And it will remind them that they had that conversation, and it'll let them know that not only did you hear what they said and care about what they said, but you remembered it enough to spend some of your business time talking about that when you see them again.
Yeah.
That's really good. So you talked to Jack that you're 52 years old. You've had this storied career at Ramsey. And now you're out on your own. You're doing your own thing. So that means you're not done learning. So talk to us a little bit about what you're learning right now.
The thing that is kind of interesting at 52 that I'm learning is just how fast this life's going by. And that almost annoyed me as a young man when I would have someone in their 50s tell me how fast it was going by. I was like, it's really not going by fast. And everybody says that. But I don't say that in a way to where that like upsets me. I'm just realizing how quickly 22 years went by in one season of my life. And now the seasons have changed, and my children are starting to grow up, and I'm in a new season, and it's going by really quickly. And it doesn't bother me. It really motivates me to do some things that I've been putting off. So if I decide I want to go see someone or something or do something, I still have a lot of energy and have good health. I really need to go do it. And that's what I would encourage our leaders and our listeners to do. Is there is a season to delay some things while you put the seed in the ground and do some hard work. But if you delay it forever, you could delay it to the point where the opportunity to go do some of those important things has passed.
Yeah.
And so whether it's reconciling with another person or going and seeing a national park, really you need to make a plan to do it and get out there and make it happen.
Yeah. I heard years ago that life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes.
Ah.
And so wisdom, right? Wisdom from the bathroom, I guess. But
Right.
no, that's good. I there's a such a fascinating story. Just a few months ago, I was talking with a CEO of a very fast growing company. He's very young, and he got put into place. Really, ultimately, the catalyst of that was the death of the founder of the organization. She had died, and she had left the company to him, or a part of it, and that and he was very honored. But one of the things he said that was so interesting, he said, is he served under this woman for many, many years as the CEO of this company and founder of the company. He said that she loved the beach. She just loved to go to the beach. And she always would talk about one day, she would kind of retire and live on the beach and all that. But that day never came. Unfortunately, she had got a disease and it took her life pretty quickly. And for him, the impact of that, what he was telling me when he was opening up, he said, I that was a profound lesson in my life that I don't ever want to live always hoping one day and for one day I'll do this, but to realize that life is what we've got right now. And I just thought it was a powerful statement for him. And he
Yeah.
was younger, but for him to say, I'm kind of making it a core value of my own personal life to say that I'm going to experience life now. And yes, I'm going to drive hard, work hard, and plan for the future. But I also don't want to always just be living for the future and then potentially one day find that it never came, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I think
Good
that's
lesson.
kind of what you're saying a little bit.
That's right. Good lesson. Good
Yeah.
Yeah,
lesson.
absolutely. So, Jack, how has failure shaped your life? And then also, if you could talk about what went right and what could have been done better.
I laugh a little when we talk about failure because I fail every day at things. I'm constantly trying new things professionally and personally, most of which end up failing terribly and giving me a great story to tell somebody over lunch and entertain others. But I'm so used to failure that failure doesn't bother me very much
Mm.
because I've learned that really when we are successful, a lot of times it's because we're standing on this heap, this pile of failures, and we just didn't quit. And so, if somebody is experiencing failures in their professional life, I tell them, as long as you don't quit, you get to get up the next day and you get to try something else. And every time you fail, you learn one more thing that doesn't work or that you're not good at, that you never want to do again. And so, even in failure, there are things that we can learn. But um, in the big areas of my life, I feel like I've gotten a few things right. I've been married to my awesome wife, Rhonda, for 27 years. We do have 8 children. We love to
Congrats.
be together. I am enjoying my life. I'm enjoying this season of my life. But if I could step neck outside of failure into a sort of a sister conversation of the wilderness, I would say that while I didn't go through a epic failure, I didn't have a crash in my life. I did go through a period of several years that I would call the wilderness years. And this is when I was doing everything that I thought was right. I wasn't doing wrong things, but things just still weren't working out like I wanted them to. And I wasn't sure exactly why. And I find that when I talk to other leaders, a lot of leaders have been through some season in their life that they would describe as a wilderness period where they were a little bit uncertain about what to do for the future. They were frustrated about what was going on. They weren't sure why things weren't going well. And that period of my life, during that time, the only thing I really wanted was out. I was like, Lord, get me out of this wilderness time. And yet, here I sit today and I look back on that time as a really rich time of my life, a rich season of my life. I learned some things during that part of my life that I could have only learned during a wilderness period that I would not have learned if everything had just continued the way that it was.
Mm.
And so that part of my life, I value it, and I encourage other leaders who are in a wilderness period to slow down a little bit, not look for the nearest exit door out of the wilderness, and try to figure out what is it that maybe they're supposed to experience or feel or learn during a wilderness time, because a lot of times I find that that season precedes the next season of our life, and a lot of time it prepares us for what's next to come.
I've often heard about the power of pause, and you oftentimes are talking about that during the good times. I've never thought about even in the wilderness taking a moment to just pause and be still, even during that time.
That's right.
Yeah. I always kind of use this line that you'll never get out of the season of your life you're in until you get out of it that which you need to get out of it.
That's
So,
right.
if you think about
Mm.
that, right, you're never going to get out of it until you get out of it and extract what you need in order to sort of get out of it. And I think that if we shift to that mindset, you made a great statement there, Jack, where you said, I think you just kind of said it, but I just picked up on that where you said, I'm just used to failure. I've gotten used to it because it's happened, so many times. But I think there's a real powerful lesson there. I really appreciate you kind of saying that because I think that um, is leaders a lot of times, especially young leaders, right, that maybe are new in a position or maybe just in a new season of their leadership and they just want to be successful, right? They want to drive, they want to get things done, they want to do everything that's in their vision to do and that. And I think that we treat failure, we don't normalize it, right? We look at it as this big event and oh my gosh, what happened and that and I wonder if there's a normalization not to accept failure, or I shouldn't say that, or to anticipate it, or look for it or hope that it happens, but to get used to it, just to say, you know what, it's okay. Like, don't normalize failure. Don't feel like something's all wrong and going crazy and you've got to scramble and all that. So I just like that idea of get used to failure. Again, not from a negative standpoint, but just from an optimistic standpoint. Say, get used to it. Just normalize it. It's going to happen. It's going to be there. And as you said, sometimes those moments are the catalytic moments that sort of propel us into that next season. So I think that's a good
Sometimes
thought.
I'll distinguish between types of failure. I really feel like there's two big types. There's fatal failure and there's non-fatal failure.
Yeah.
If you're just going to get some skint knees or even some broken bones while we're learning a really valuable life lesson, we can recover. We do want to make sure we don't run the business off a cliff
Sure.
or crash our lives in the middle of learning how to do failure. That's a different kind of failure. But when it comes to non fatal failure,
Yeah.
I've never talked to a really successful leader who didn't have a trail of failures behind them. And some of those failures really hurt. And some of those failures they thought might cost them everything. But if they got up the next day and they went back and they were diligent and they did what they were called to do, they always stepped into that next season and they always eventually find what it was they were put on this planet to do.
Yeah.
And in the business world, I mean, didn't you experience that at Ramsey? Because you weren't afraid to try a new product line. And if it didn't work, then you moved on to the next one. But
Right.
so many times people as business owners, and I get it, there's a lot vested in it financially and everything else, but they don't ever move forward because they're trying to get it 100% correct. And you're
That's
never
right.
going to move off dead center there. You've got to get out there, try it, learn from that failure, take the next step, etc.
Absolutely. I agree.
Jack, what are you reading that our listeners should read? What's on the list? I just want to know the list. Like, what are you reading right now? And then can you talk to us a little bit about how it's going to help them and how it's helped you?
Almost all the books that I read are either leadership or about people, psychology, business books. This summer, I've taken a little bit of a break. I just finished Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's kind of
Yeah.
one that was on
Great
the
book.
list of like everybody that ever had a reading list said you should read this book, and I hadn't read it, so I just read it. Great book on negotiation, and I loved that. Actually, I took a break this summer and read some non-business books. I just finished Killers of the Flower Moon. This is a book that is actually coming out in film in the fall. Martin Scorsese is directing it. It's a true story, but it's kind of drama, murder, that kind of thing. The beginning of the FBI is a part of that story, and so I just finished that as well. But one of my favorite books that really has made a difference for me. It's interesting that we talked about Dr. Henry Cloud earlier, but it is the book Necessary Endings. If there's one book that I say really changed the way I see something in a big way, it was this book. Necessary Endings is a book about ending things like relationships, jobs, activities, anything in your life that you feel like should change. And if you grew up in the time that we did, a lot of times we heard from other men in our life, if you quit that ball team, you'll be a quitter the rest of your life. Like
Mm.
you need to stick with this no matter what. And I think there's a lot of value in finishing something that you started uh, to a point. There's a lot that you can learn there by finishing something, even when you're not enjoying it, especially if you've committed it. But this book changes the way that we look at ending things. And the picture that Cloud uses that I love is he changes it to where we think of it more like pruning a rose bush. And the rose bush really can't sustain all the blooms that it's going to have.
Mm.
And so somebody that has roses knows that we have to prune away some of the blooms so that the best blooms can become magnificent, and our lives are a lot like that. And so Cloud gives us some processes, some language to start understanding that sometimes ending something is as much a part of our lives as is starting something new. And in fact, sometimes we can't really start something new until we end something that has run its course or that has become a negative in our life. And so that could be a friendship with the wrong people. It could be a activity that's taking up so much of your time that you're not putting that time into something that is more important to you, like your family or the next job that you want to go after or something like that. And Cloud really takes this from being just an emotional decision, like I've had it, I'm done, I quit, to really giving us a framework that we can walk through over time and really begin to make decisions that feel wise, that don't feel knee jerk or emotional, and that when you look back on them 6 months after you've ended something, you feel like it was a good decision and not a foolish decision. And so that's one of the books that's really just made a big impact on me.
Yeah. Is that a recent book of his, or is it one that he's had for a while?
His original book, Boundaries, was written 25
Yeah.
years ago, and it
Yeah.
was his big book. And this is a book that is maybe lesser known than that one, but I picked it up and went through it. And I've actually read it twice. When I was ending my season at Ramsey, this was a job I loved. This was people that I love and loved then and still love. I'm still friends with Dave and the board and everyone there. Fantastic people, fantastic company. But my season was coming to a close. My season was coming to an end, and I knew it before others knew it. And I went back through this book. I went back through chapter 6, and Dr. Cloud gave me some tangible things that when I went and had that tough conversation with Dave and with my board about why I felt like my season was coming to a close, they understood. They didn't like it, but they understood. They agreed with the framework that Dr. Cloud had given us, and they honored my decision, and it helped us to end that season as dear friends.
That's really good. That's precious too.
That is. Yeah, excited to read that. I'm not familiar with that book and that, but I'm gonna get a copy of that. I think that's so good because and I love the point that you made there that as leaders sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on the start, but not always the finish, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that, right? Because I think so many times we associate that with losing or quitting, like kind of like you said, right? We grew up in maybe that kind of environment to where you give it your all and that. But I love that. I love that framework, Jack. I think that I really appreciate that, and just your story of knowing how it impacted you and being able to utilize that and that. I'm sure there's many people probably listening that could probably benefit from having a language like you said and maybe a framework of how to approach it, not from a knee jerk way, but from a wise kind of standpoint. So I appreciate that. That's really good.
What I took from that is Jack is a reader And so when he
That's right.
came to that moment in life, he had that to fall back on and say, "Hey, I need to source that because I read that some time ago and review that because now I'm at this point in my life where this is relevant."
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Jack, obviously you've got a lot of experience. You've had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of cool things. What have you done that our listeners should do?
I may throw you a curveball here, Jamin. What the thing that I feel like that I've done almost accidentally right, that really has nothing to do with business, but it has really been a part of who I am every day in my business, is to keep my sense of humor.
Hmm.
My work was stressful, and not because anybody put it on me. We were just doing a really hard job. We were the David in a Goliath world, and we were doing it on cash without borrowing money. We had big goals, and it was just a stressful job. And one of the things that helped me on a daily basis was to never quit losing and never lose my sense of humor, never quit laughing, never miss an opportunity to get other people laughing. And one of the things that I often did was walk into a meeting that was about to be difficult. It was about to have conflict. It was serious. The outcome mattered. But I was known for taking the first 5 to 7 minutes to tell something that had happened that morning on the way to work that could get the room laughing
Uh-huh.
and get the room making fun of each other, or maybe just laughing at me. I was the butt of most of my jokes. And, keeping our sense of humor helps us to not get too serious.
Yeah.
Even when we're doing serious things, it doesn't mean that we have to become serious people. When we become serious people, a lot of times we start to let the world close in around us a little bit. We start to make decisions from the wrong frame of mind, and we let stress overcome us, and we don't have a way to release it. And if I were talking to a young leader and he said, "Hey, what's one of the things, one of the tools I need to stick in my tool bag?" I would tell them, don't give up ever your sense of humor. If you ever find yourself where you can't laugh, you need to pause and figure out what's going on, because you're about to head into a spiral if you've lost your sense of humor. And so, in our personal lives and our business lives, one of the things that I got right was keeping my ability to see funny things even in the midst of difficult times.
I really love that. You can always count on me in a boardroom. I'll be the guy that'll lift the pressure a
That's
little
right.
bit and take a
Right.
joke because it's like it's getting too deep in here.
Yeah. That's good.
I love that.
I remember years ago I read the book Primal Leadership. I can't remember the authors of it, but Primal Leadership. And in it, they actually did a lot of case studies on laughter and from a teamwork standpoint and from a leadership perspective. And that's not what the book is solely about, but it's a big component of what they talk about. But they had some, and I can't remember off the top of my head all the statistics and things like that, but they talked about how much laughter is a unifier
Yeah.
of people in that. I mean, it's the universal language, right? Cross culturally. I mean, laughter is something that everybody in every culture, every ethnicity throughout the history of the world has sort of connected with. It's a language we all understand and kind of share in common. And I love that. I think that's great advice for leaders. Sometimes we take ourselves so seriously. We're just again driven and all that stuff. But I think that not only for our own well-being and sort of just inner health of never losing that, but I think even as a leader, like you said, even in our tool belt, that laughter is an actual tool that can really open up communication, innovation, being able to kind of foster teamwork in that. And have you found that to be true? I mean, I know you said laughter obviously is a big component of what you did and still doing that, but maybe unpack that a little bit. I mean, what are some ways, Jack, that leaders could use humor in their tool belt? Um, it sounds like that they got to come up with jokes or something like that. But how does a leader have humor in their tool belt? Like, what are some ways that they could do that, or that maybe you've done that you could pass on?
Let's say that you're the owner of a company, or you're the CEO, or you're the senior leader in a room full of leaders who report to you, and you're about to tackle a difficult problem, one of the things that's often on the minds of those other leaders is, am I about to lose all of my influence, all of my credibility as a leader if this thing, if our CEO, if our owner finds out that we've failed? And fear can creep into the hearts and minds of the people in the room. And if you're the senior leader, if you're the owner, the CEO, and you can walk in and find something to laugh about yourself, something that's happened to you over the weekend, something that you saw in a movie or on TV, a funny story from the past that's kind of your go to story, something that signals to the room that you haven't lost touch. You haven't lost your footing. You're still on good terms with them. What it allows me to do really is to even be even tougher on the issues, because we've kind of established that, hey, we're still friends. I still love you. I still want to work with you. I still respect the work that you do. But now let's talk about this project that failed miserably, and let's be tough together on why we failed so that we don't fail again. And let's be honest with each other. And then when we're done, we can go grab lunch and we can be back on good terms again. But let's have a tough conversation while we're here. That's why we're here. And there was something about having that grounding of that my leader, my CEO, still respects me and likes me, even though I failed over here and cost the company $100,000 and 6 weeks worth of work. There was something that empowered that team to go back and do a better job. And I know even when I had some of my worst days, when I had messed something up, if Dave walked up to me after the meeting was over and said something funny to me, even if he was joking at me a little bit, it let me know we were okay.
Yeah.
It let me know this is still the guy that is my hero, and we're good, and we're going to be okay. And it actually gave me more energy to go back to my office and get it right.
Yeah. I love that.
That is good. No,
I'm really glad you
that's
shared that.
great advice. Yeah, and I think it is, something that, again, I call it that unifier, right? I mean, laughter just unifies us, and so I love that. Doesn't mean you can't still come in and deliver a hard message, or come in and still tackle the issues that are at play, but I love how you said it kind of grounds a little bit of that, and it just, opens up that door for us to say, okay, if we can kind of remove the emotional concern of everything, like, okay, it's going to be okay, now we can tackle the issue versus having to get through that layer of, oh my gosh, am I at stake, is my relationship, is my influence at stake, and the project is at stake. Well, if we can remove that emotional kind of relational component and say, hey, it's okay, we're going to laugh a little bit through some things, but we're also going to tackle the issue, you can get there faster rather than that. So that's great. I think that's really, really good wisdom.
Jack, we've talked a lot about this past season of your life, but you're in a new season of life now. So talk to us about what you're working on now, and just tell us everything that's going on with you now, and what the future holds.
I'm having a lot of fun right now. I I look back at the things I had been doing and said, what was my absolute favorite part of my role that my biggest fans and my biggest critics, and I have both, could agree on. And it was really around helping people in business. And so I'm now working with owners and CEOs and senior leaders to solve people problems in their business. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not a therapist or a marriage counselor. That's not who I am. But in a business environment, when there's something at stake and there's something to be won and lost and there's money at stake and there's different levels of authority, that's sort of where I thrive in solving people problems. And so I'm helping owners solve people problems like board issues or underperformance, getting the right people in the right seats, mediation between top leaders or family business owners, anything that is what I would call a really difficult business problem that involves people. That's where I'm focusing all my attention. Most of the time, I talk to leaders It's casual, it's over coffee, it's over email or Zoom or phone, and I help as many people as I can that way, and I don't charge them for that. I really just work with a very small number of people in an ongoing way, and that's only if they really want it and I really want it. I do some coaching there as well. And so I'm really enjoying that. People can find me on my website, jackgalloway.com. They can send me questions and I'll give them a personal response, just like we've done here today. Or they can connect with me through LinkedIn and see some of the content that I post there as well.
All right, Jack, is there a book coming down the road?
No books as of right now. Right now, I do write a lot of content, but it's very situational, very specific, and it's usually based off of real life events that are happening right then or have happened in the past. And so I love really relevant solutions to specific problems that other people don't know how to solve.
All right, Jack.
That's good.
John, any last words?
Yeah, no, one, I'm reaching out to you because I've got a few, I've got some clients I'm going to get your input on there. So I'm going to get the people whisperer on this right here.
Right.
So, no, Jack, we so appreciate your time. One thing I would ask, and this is just kind of off the cuff, I kind of love to kind of ask this at the end of some of our interviews, but we've got a lot of listeners that are leaders probably in some capacity or another, maybe young, maybe more seasoned leaders, and all different industries and that we sort of cover and talk to. What in the light of that, if there was one piece of advice that you could just give leaders today as they're listening, what's kind of on your heart? If you had kind of 1 minute just to give them the best advice you could give to a leader, what would that be, kind of off the cuff?
Off the cuff, that would be to tell a young leader to try to find some work that they love. And that doesn't mean that you love it every day. It means that you love what you're doing and the people that you're doing with. I would tell them to never miss an opportunity to learn from every failure and every success. And I would tell them that if there's one thing they can really do over time better than anyone else, it is to learn about themselves. Learn what motivates them and what suffocates them. Learn what they're great at and what other people tell them they're not so great at. And be real enough with themselves, be humble enough to know they're not great at everything, that over a period of time, you can either have a 20-year experience or you can have a 1-year experience 20 times and not really be any more wise at the end of that time than when you started. But if we'll just learn every day, and when people give us criticism or difficult feedback, nobody enjoys that. It always stings, but listen to it, learn from it, consider it, take it in, and over time, really get a sense of what is it that you love to do? What is it that you're great to do? And then try to find work where those two things align and go out and do your thing. Don't try to be someone else. Go out and be your own creative, best version of you, whatever that is, because that's what the world needs is your very best.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. It was so good to have you, Jack, and
Absolutely.
just share your wisdom. So many good nuggets and just good stories, and I think good wisdom that I've gleaned from that I know our listeners will. So we so appreciate you being here and being on the podcast with us.
You can find more information about Jack, as he said, at jackgalloway.com. And I love this phrase on his website: work will come and go, but relationships stay with us forever. Jack, thanks for joining us with Coffee with Leaders.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed it.
Wow. I really think that was one of my favorite interviews. I've loved all the interviews we're doing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just the point of where I'm at in life right now, but that really spoke to me. Jack Galloway, that was awesome.
Yeah, great insight. I mean, so many good nuggets as always that we have on this podcast. I loved just him talking about humor. That was one thing that really stuck out to me of just how important it is that as leaders, we don't take ourselves so seriously that we sort of lose that humanity and lose that laughter with our teams, with our organization, and that, which really does unify us and kind of bond us together. So many good things. I love to get used to failure and just normalize it and know that it's a part of life. But so many great nuggets. Hopefully you as a listener got some great ideas just some great insight kind of behind the scenes of a great guy who has done some incredible things and is doing some great things. So we sure appreciate Jack.
When he was talking about failure, I wrote a little graphic on my iPad here of failure, and then it's like a mountain, and on top is success, and really that's my image to remember to embrace failure.
Yeah.
Don't just, oh, I tried that, it didn't work, move on. Keep trying, don't quit.
Yeah. Those are the stepping stones to sort of get to success, right?
Yeah,
I've always said that the path of success is paved with failure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to look at it. So very good.
It is. Hey, we want to say thanks again to Legacy Business Consultants. If you have any questions or you need some advice or just interested in having Legacy Business Consultants work with you, please feel free to reach out to them, legacybc.net. That's legacybc.net. We want to thank Mike with MWP Images. You can find more information at mwpimages.com, but he's the guy behind the screen doing all the work and has all this fancy equipment that we use and stuff. So thanks to Mike. We appreciate him. Check us out on coffeewithleaders.com, all the social media channels, and please tell a friend and ask them to like and subscribe. Oh, hang on. Ask them to like and subscribe. There we go. Have a good one. Thanks.